The Gospel of Barnabas is a text discovered in Madrid, Spain in 1634. It claims to have the Apostle Barnabas as its author. Today, we will examine the text and see whether the claims are true or false. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. The only two surviving manuscripts of the Gospel of Barnabas are written in Italian and Spanish and date back to the Middle Ages. Muslim apologists claim that radiocarbon dating proved their origin to be in the 2nd century after Christ, but this claim is false. There are no published studies on the age of the manuscripts, and the text itself proves its medieval origin. Fasten your seatbelts. It will be a wild journey. It is important to note that the Apostle Barnabas lived in the 1st century and would have known the area and historical facts of 1st century Judea. Keep this in mind while we examine these writings' grave historical, geographical, and cultural mistakes. In the 3rd chapter, Pontius Pilate is described to be the governor of Judea at the time Jesus was born, but actually he became governor in the year 26 after Christ. The first Roman prefect over Judea was Coponius, reigning from the year 6 to 9 after Christ, followed by Marcus Ambivulus, Annius Rufus, and Valerius Gratus. Surely Barnabas would have known that and made not such an immense historical error. The Gospel of Barnabas speaks in the 54th chapter about a gold coin being worth 60 mites. There was no such currency called mites in 1st century Judea. Small copper coins at the time of Jesus were called lepton, while the English King James Version translated the term lepton to mite in 1611. Such a coin did not exist in the 1st century. A deeper look into the meaning gives us more insight. The Italian manuscript speaks of minuti. At medieval times, an Italian silver denarius was worth 60 minuti. This shows obvious historical inconsistency, as the 1st century Roman golden coin aureus was worth 3,200 lepton. This points towards an influence from Spain or Italy. In the 69th chapter, the Gospel of Barnabas claims that Jesus spoke about the Republic. Now this is a damning error. Judea was everything else but a republic in the 1st century. It was part of the Roman Empire, with Tiberius as emperor and Pontius Pilate as governor of Judea. The word republic itself was not known in the ancient world. It was first used by medieval northern Italian writers such as Leonardo Bruni, who began to describe governments based on communes and free citizens as res publica. The term republic is a medieval creation based on the Latin language. Now, why would a 1st century Jew living in the Roman Empire use a word such as republic, which was not only an incorrect statement, but also not part of the vocabulary of this time? Throughout the whole text, Herod Antipas is described as the pagan ruler of Jerusalem and Judea. This claim has two errors. Herod Antipas was Jewish, not from the Gentiles, and he did not rule over Jerusalem or Judea but Galilee. We know that Barnabas knew this historical fact. An Italian or Spanish medieval forger, however, may easily oversee these historical details. The Gospel of Barnabas claims that Jesus' body was wrapped up in 100 pounds of precious ointments. The pound was not a weight measurement in the 1st century. It was first introduced by the English King Offa of Mercia in the 8th century and found its way to medieval Italy and Spain. In later times, the ancient Roman libra became known as Roman pound libra. However, the term pound was not used by anyone in the Roman Empire. Another amusing error can be found in the 82nd chapter. There, Jesus spoke about the year of Jubilee, which occurred every 100 years. That is an error if we consider the 1st century, because the biblical Jubilee year occurred every 50 years. But in the year 1300, Pope Boniface VIII changed the Jubilee calendar into a period of 100 years. The fact that the Gospel of Barnabas says the observation of Jubilees was every 100 years demonstrates that it was written after this time. The writer of the Gospel of Barnabas had knowledge about wooden wine casks, as they were used in the Middle Ages to store and carry wine. However, in the Bible we read about wine skins made of leathered animal skins. Surely the author of the Gospel of Barnabas would know about this, unless they were a medieval forger writing in medieval Europe. Another funny error is the mentioning of barons in the Gospel of Barnabas in the 131st chapter. The title baron is tightly connected to medieval feudalistic societies. It was introduced by the Normans who conquered England in 1066. The Normans brought this title also to Italy during the 11th century. Baron was a hereditary title and recognized by the King of Italy. They ruled over so-called baronies, which did not exist in the 1st century in Judea. This shows the feudalistic medieval background of the author. Chapter 20 speaks of Jesus sailing to Nazareth. Every 1st century Jew, and especially the Apostle Barnabas, knew that Nazareth is a landlocked town, around a 10-hour walk away from the Sea of Galilee. No one who was familiar with the events of Jesus' life and ministry could make such obvious mistakes? The author obviously never was in Israel and was certainly not a Jewish man living in Jerusalem like Barnabas. There is another proof for the inauthenticity of the Gospel of Barnabas. Whenever it quoted scripture, it is cited from the Latin Vulgate translation, which was made in the 4th century. This is 300 years after this book was supposedly written. Having seen some of the inconsistencies in the Gospel of Barnabas, we should look for the motivation behind this text. What was the intention behind writing it, and what is the message of the Gospel of Barnabas? It can be found in the 84th chapter when Jesus supposedly mentioned Muhammad as the blessed man who would come after him. Well, that makes a lot of sense and shows how untrue the statement actually is. There is total silence among early Muslim writers about the existence of such an alternative gospel. We can find different defenses of Islam written by Muslim writers from the 7th to the 14th century. However, the first mention of the Gospel of Barnabas occurred in the 15th century. It is simply the case that this text did not exist in the centuries before. Muslims could say that this text was somehow suppressed by religious authorities who wanted to hide the truth, but this statement is also nonsensical. There were many Gospels circulating among heretics during the centuries. There never was an attempt to suppress the fact of their existence. The opposite is true. The Church Fathers wrote defenses of the Orthodox Christian faith against these heretical texts. The arguments for the Gospel of Barnabas can be considered as debunked. We do not find a single citation of this work from Christians, heretics, or Muslims before the 15th century. There is no evidence that it existed before this time. The author is unfamiliar with geography or customs of 1st century Israel. He made obvious mistakes in geography and history. Instead, everything points towards a medieval forgery from Italy or Spain. Barnabas the Apostle would not have written a work mentioning future currencies, governments, or inventions. His knowledge about politics and culture would be that of a 1st century Jew living in Jerusalem. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel. Stay tuned for more Catholic apologetics. God bless.